Hey everybody, this is Tom from DLD Drum School. We're going to build on some great work that we've already done in beginner lesson 5, which you can reference in the comments down below. And in that video, we learned how to play the 4 initial DLD Drum School rhythms, which have got so much variation and versatility between them. We can cover so many different situations. What we're going to do in this video is build on those 4 and use a bit of imagination and develop some new variations using almost exactly the same ideas. So let's get into this, and if we call the first 4 rhythms rhythm 1, 2, 3 and 4, let's have a look at rhythm number 5. So get used to the idea of reading this music, and a reminder of the most powerful part of your body, from your brain to your body, is the mouth, okay? So I want you to remember we are going to say what we see. Do not say what's in the back of your memory, that voice in the back of your mind trying to distract you. It never helps. Ignore the back of your brain, focus on your eyes, say what you see. So you can see it on the screen. And for those of you with an eagle eye, you will be able to see this is actually exactly the same as rhythm number 2, apart from the first bass drum is now split into a double. So how do we say this rhythm? Let's just say what we see. Nice and slow, we see a bass, bass, snare, and bass, bass, snare, and. So when you get used to this, a bit faster with rhythm now, bass, bass, snare, and bass, bass, snare, and. And all I'm going to do now is use my mouth and tell my body what to play, one step at a time, slow to begin with. Bass, bass, snare, and bass, bass, snare, and. Focus on accuracy, okay? 3, 4. And hopefully you can start to feel a rhythm like this one, for example. It's the We Will Rock You rhythm. You know that. Apart from that same feel. Or it's the quiet verse element of Smells Like Teen Spirit. You know, you can start to hear these rhythms in your favorite music in different places. So moving on to rhythm number 6. And what we're introducing here, again, you can see this on the screen, is the idea of a double snare. Now I'm putting this one side by side with rhythm 1, because what we're looking out for, again, is the changes. And the only change in rhythm 6 compared to rhythm 1 is that that first snare drum on beat number 2 is now a double snare. So how do we say this bar? Let's get used to saying what we see. Bass and snare, snare, bass and snare, and. Slow and steady, focus on accuracy. Don't worry if it sounds boring at this stage. Now the rhythm in your voice, when you get used to this, bass and snare, snare, bass and snare, and. Now when we do this snare, snare, basically it's like clapping your hands together apart from downwards, okay? It's a snare, snare. So let me show you this nice and steady. 3, 4. Bass and snare, snare, bass and snare, and. And when you get used to this with a bit more speed, it kind of adds a bit of a bouncy groove to that backbeat snare drum. And remember, you don't have to play the same bar over and over and over again. So you may just drop in this rhythm just as almost like a mini fill for a little bit of variation. We don't have to do the same one bar repeated over and over and over again. So moving on to rhythm number 7, and again we're using this idea of taking what we already know, making a small change, but from a sound point of view it makes a big difference. So rhythm number 7 is on your screen, and I'm putting this side by side with rhythm number 4 that we already know. And in this case you can see that rather than us adding something on, we've taken something away, which is absolutely fine. Whenever we develop ideas, taking things away can be just as interesting as adding things. Because if you think about it, if all we ever do is add more and add more and add more, we'll end up with too much. So this is a very close cousin of rhythm number 4. And what we've taken away is the bass drum on the and of beat number 2. So whereas rhythm 4 is bass and snare bass, this rhythm here begins bass and snare and. Now the other interesting feature that results from this is we end up with a double and. I think this is the first time that we've seen a double and. So looking at the screen, rhythm 7, again, how would we say this? Always get used to saying it first. Bass and snare and bass, snare and. It's a double and. Now again, as always, starting to get used to how our brain works, when you do this double and, it's probably the first time you've done one, it's going to feel strange. So the back of the brain is going to resist this. It's going to try to make you do something that you don't want to. So focus on the front of your brain. Say what you see, not what's stuck in the back of your brain. Nice and slow. Bass and snare and bass, snare and. Get used to that. And then 4 bars in a row. Again, this can very often suit a slightly faster tempo. Got a real nice funky groove, a real variation. And again, mix these up. Okay, so moving on to rhythm number 8. And what we're doing is we're taking the idea that we developed in rhythm 6 with the double snare, and we're going to exploit this idea and try a double snare. This was actually created by my good friend George, who's given me so much help behind the scenes. Let's see you, George. What a good man. And the reason I'm mentioning George is because these ideas don't all have to come from me. We just use our imagination, trial and error, bass and snare, snare, bass, snare, snare, and. And let's put this to a faster tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to rhythm number 9. Here it is on the screen. Bass, bass, snare, bass, and snare, and. As always, if your words are getting a bit tied up, that's normal, but you need to keep saying it over and over again until you've got good accuracy and good rhythm in your voice. Bass, bass, snare, bass, and snare, and. What's interesting about this rhythm, if you chop this rhythm in half down the center, in the first half of the bar, there are 3 bass drums. In the second half of the bar, there are 0 bass drums. Now, when your bass drum brain sees that there are 0 bass drums in the second half, guess what it wants to do? It wants to do a bass drum, even though there are none written down. Don't be surprised if you find your bass drum wanting, or maybe even actually doing a bass drum in that second half. You've got to control your brain and your body and make sure you say what you see. Bass, bass, snare, bass, and snare, and 3, 4. And finally, we're going to move on to rhythm number 10. And again, if I put this side by side with rhythm number 1, you'll see that actually it's almost exactly the same. The only difference is that on the snare drums, on beats 2 and 4, we also have bass drums underneath. So we end up with this effect. If I only play the bass drums, bass and bass and bass and bass, and we've got this driving, almost like real dance kind of groove punching through with those 4 bass drums. And we are going to, whenever we see a bass, snare and hi-hat together, we go together, 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 okay? Exactly the same. Now don't be surprised, because that left hand doesn't really like the right leg. It's kind of almost but not quite. What you need to do is what we call interlock those 3 together. So when we say together, we are telling them to go together, okay? That's the secret with this one. So how would we say this rhythm? Nice and slow. We will say bass and together and bass and together, emphasizing the g of gather. Bass and together and bass and together and. I'm going to play this nice and slowly. bass, and together, and bass, and together, and. And again, this has a real driving kind of dance groove feel to it, probably more suitable at a faster tempo in most situations. It'll go like this. So there we have it. Quite a long video, this one, but I think it's important that we really take our time to learn how to not just play these rhythms, but read them, understand them, and feel what it is that we're doing. Different rhythms for different situations. As you apply these techniques to the real world, playing to backing tracks or playing in a live situation, remember golden rule number 3. So important that you listen to what you're fitting in with, understand what you're fitting in with, and one of these rhythms or a variation of these rhythms is going to be so useful to improving the way that you express your drumming. Keep on practicing, keep enjoying your drumming, and remember, everything that you do, do it like a drummer. We'll see you in the next video.